They're testing you right now. Not openly, subtly, through comments, through tone, through small violations disguised as accidents. Most people don't even realize it's happening. And most people don't notice until one small moment gives it away. If someone has ever said, "You're overreacting," or "It's not that serious," there's a good chance your boundaries were already being tested. And most people don't notice until the boundary's already gone. And by then, the dynamic has already changed. Here's the truth. People don't respect boundaries because you set them. They respect boundaries because you enforce them. And before enforcement comes testing. Always. Stay until the end, because I'll show you the 7 signs someone is testing your boundaries, and the exact response that ends the testing permanently. Sign 1. They push slightly past acceptable. Not dramatically, just slightly. A comment that's almost too far, a request that's almost too much, a tone that's almost disrespectful. And they watch, waiting to see what you allow. Not your words, your reaction. If you let it slide, you've answered. This is acceptable. And what's acceptable once becomes repeatable. Not because they're calculating, because humans optimize. And you just showed them the boundary is flexible. Sign 2. They forget what you already said. You set a boundary, clear, direct. And days later, they act like it never happened. I thought you were joking. I didn't think you were serious. You never said that. This isn't memory failure. This is testing enforcement. Because words without follow-through are just noise, and noise gets ignored. Sign 3. They frame boundary enforcement as your problem. You enforce a limit, and suddenly, you're the difficult one. Why are you being so sensitive? It's not that serious. You're overreacting. This is manipulation, not confusion. They're trying to make enforcement cost more than tolerance. So you stop enforcing, and once you stop, the boundary disappears. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." When someone tests your boundary, they expect negotiation, explanation, justification. Don't give it. Enforce. Once, calmly, and move forward. Because negotiation signals the boundary is optional. And optional boundaries aren't boundaries. Sign 4. They ask for exceptions immediately. You set a standard, and before it's even established, they're asking for exceptions. Just this once. This situation is different. Can't you be flexible? This isn't a request. It's a test to see if the boundary applies to them. And if you make an exception before the rule is even followed, there is no rule, just suggestions. And suggestions don't command respect. Sign 5. They escalate slowly after you don't respond. You ignore a small violation, so they try slightly larger, then larger, then larger. Not because they're evil, because silence reads as permission. And permission invites more pressure. This is called boundary creep. And it only stops when you stop it. Not through explanation, through enforcement. Immediate, consistent, unapologetic. Sign 6. They compare you to others who allow it. Everyone else is fine with this. Nobody else has a problem. Why are you the only one? This is social pressure disguised as reasoning. They're trying to make you feel like your boundary is the problem. It's not. Their violation is. And other people's tolerance of violation is irrelevant to your standard. Your boundary doesn't require majority approval. It requires your enforcement. That's it. Sign 7. They retest after time passes. You enforced once. Weeks go by. And they try again. Not the same violation, a similar one. They're checking, was that a permanent boundary or a temporary mood? And your response answers that question. If you enforce again, it's permanent. If you let it slide, it was temporary. And temporary boundaries teach people to wait you out. And once you see these patterns, you can't unsee them. If this series has shifted how you see power, subscribe. Because this isn't the end. This is the foundation. And once you understand how boundaries create respect, everything else becomes easier to navigate. Here's what most people do wrong. They think one enforcement is enough. It's not. Boundaries require consistency, not just at the beginning, forever. Because the moment consistency breaks, testing resumes, not maliciously, automatically. Because humans push where resistance softens, and soft resistance is no resistance. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. If you would be respected, enforce your boundaries every time. No exceptions for comfort, no exceptions for convenience, no exceptions because enforcement feels hard. Hard enforcement today prevents harder violations tomorrow. Always." Here's the pattern. They test, you enforce. They test again. You enforce again. They recalibrate. Not because you convince them, because enforcement is consistent. And consistency creates certainty. Certainty ends testing, not through fear, through structure. Because structure doesn't negotiate, it just is. And what simply is gets accepted or avoided. Either way, you're protected. I used to think people tested me because I was weak. They didn't. They tested me because I was inconsistent. I'd enforce one day, tolerate the next, enforce again, then let it slide. And that inconsistency created confusion, not clarity. So they kept testing, not to hurt me, to figure out where the actual line was. And I kept moving it. So they kept pushing. The day I stopped moving the line, everything changed. Everything became predictable. Someone tested, I enforced. They tested again, I enforced again. Same response, same consequence, same boundary. And after 3 consistent enforcements, the testing stopped. Not because I threatened them, because they learned the boundary was real. And real boundaries get respected, not immediately, eventually, through repetition. Here's what the Stoics knew. Your boundaries define your position. When boundaries are flexible, your position is unstable. When boundaries are fixed, your position is solid. And solid positions don't get tested endlessly. They get accepted, or people move on. And both outcomes protect you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Stop arguing for respect. Stop explaining your boundaries. Stop negotiating your standards. Just enforce them, quietly, consistently, permanently, and let enforcement speak louder than any explanation ever could. Final truth. They're testing your boundaries because boundaries without enforcement are just words. And words without consequence are noise. You want the testing to stop? Enforce, every time. No exceptions, no negotiations, no explanations beyond. This doesn't work for me. Then, consequence. Not anger, not drama, just consequence. Distance, reduced access, withdrawn energy, whatever the boundary requires. And here's what happens. The testing doesn't stop immediately. It stops eventually, after they learn that your boundary is immovable. And people eventually adjust to what doesn't move. And immovable boundaries stop getting tested. Not because people give up, because testing what doesn't move wastes energy. And humans conserve energy. They stop pushing where nothing moves, and they adjust to what won't be changed. That adjustment is respect. not spoken, demonstrated through their behavior, not yours.